All righty. Welcome, everybody, to today's session, Build a Better Business Workshop. So in this series, we getting some audio issues, guys?
Yeah, Doug, your audio seemed to have gone from your microphone into just your internal microphone for some reason.
Okay. Sean, I think I'm going to just hand it over to you to take it away then.
All right. Okay, good, thanks. All right, everybody. Welcome back. We apologize for technical difficulties. We've been doing this sort of thing, these live streams for a couple of years now, and hadn't run into this one. But anyway, I'm here with Debbie Taylor. Debbie, say hello.
Hello.
We're advancing Debbie's Build a Better Business Workshop, which starts February 28th and runs for 3 hours a day over 4 consecutive weeks. This is a virtual webinar. Hundreds of advisors have attended them in the last few years. People absolutely love it. It is a smorgasbord of practice management and business development opportunities for you to see exactly how Debbie does it, how she works with her team around these issues. And additionally, you're able to, figure out which one of these interesting new insights or particular plays you want to add to your playbook. And Debbie gives you all the details about how she and her team is doing it. And the other great thing about it is, I mentioned it's 4 weeks in a row as opposed to 4 days in a row. So you and your team can listen in on the session and then, go back and have a meeting and discuss, the 2 or 3 interesting takeaways from session 1 that you want to start making plans to implement, or just simply discuss at your marketing or your daily or weekly meetings that you're having with your team. So it's a huge opportunity to see how Debbie has built her business over the last 20 or 30 years. And so we're doing these live streams in advance of the workshop. And today we're going to be talking about 2 topics. We're talking about I believe it's session 3, which is about, it's called Build Amazing Marketing and Communication Strategy. So you can see right there what that topic is. And session 4, the client experience. So Debbie, let's talk about the marketing communications. Sometimes I think that some people want to shoehorn marketing and communications into one thing. They call it Marcom, but they're really separate and distinct. At least in my mind and others, I believe, they're really separate and distinct activities with separate goals and different audiences often. So why don't you start off by talking about, a little bit about how your own approach to marketing has, changed and evolved in your 20 plus years in the business.
Yeah, wow. By the way, I've never heard of that Marcom thing. Did you just make that up?
No, it's an MBA term.
How has it changed? Yeah. So I think years ago we were much more limited in what we could do, right? We didn't have the technology, we didn't have the efficiencies. And so I think the expectations were a lot lower. And I think now as the technology is rolled out and people's expectations have increased so much, right? We're talking about like Amazon. You're getting delivery same day with Amazon, right? You're getting responses 24/7. And so I think people are getting accustomed to that level of personalization, that level of sort of communication and targeting, right? Good or bad, right? Good or bad. But at the end of the day, people are accustomed to that personalization, that targeting. And I think then as advisory firms, we can't really hide behind like, oh, we're just a small shop. Oh, that's not what we really do here. I think on some level, we need to try to bridge that gap between the type of service that our clients are getting pretty much everywhere on their living room couch, wherever they go, whatever they do, and what they're getting from their financial advisor. So I'll say that and stop there.
Yeah. I mean, the second you launch a website and you go from the days when you had a brochure and a phone number, maybe, if you were out there in the early days with AOL or CompuServe, you had an email address. But anyway, the day you launched your website, you suddenly were open 24/7 because, people can arrive at your door and express an interest. Whereas, in the old days, you left at 5 o'clock on Friday and, maybe you didn't think about work all weekend, but now, the emails can pop in, people can visit your website, they can download things, they can complete forms, express interest, and so the level of expectation for all consumers, not just investors looking to hook up with an advisor, have changed dramatically.
Yes.
So what on the marketing front in this session, not to dive into the details that much because we don't have time for that. The idea is here to sort of give people an idea of what you'll be talking about. So what are the things you like to talk about? What are your favorite aspects of the marketing sessions when you're putting on your workshop?
Yeah, and so I do refer to it as communications because I think marketing has become almost a dirty word. Okay, and so I call it communication strategy, and also our communications are trying to serve two different purposes, right? We're trying to service our existing clients and retain them and educate and inform them and stay connected, but we're also trying to use often those same communications to be performing outreach to folks that might be interested in our firm. And so it's sort of like a Venn diagram, and I'm not telling you that every single outreach completely overlaps, but I will tell you maybe 70 or 80% of it, there's some overlap. And so we want to be very proactive. So I'll tell you some of the things that are sort of like on my hit parade, right, is obviously the written communications. So there should be some type of written communication strategy, and that could include newsletters. And of course, there's some debate about frequency. We do weekly. I know that is outside the norm, and that's a lot. I get that, okay? So maybe it's every other week. Maybe it's once a month. Maybe it's quarterly, right? Or maybe it's just when sort of the mood catches you. But some type of outreach with written newsletters, whatever that looks like for your firm. So I'd say that's one of the things to think about. And then another thing that we do, which I am a really big proponent of, are the announcements. And I've written articles about them. And this is separate from the newsletter. What we found when we surveyed our clients through the client advisory board is that some of them were not reading the newsletters because there's too much information on varied topics, right? So if you're like a younger client, and I have an article in there about Social Security, chances are you're not going to read that article, right? Let's just say. And so what we did is we created announcements, which are single purpose. You sort of almost like a truth in advertising, where up on the headline, it's very clear, like Medicare open enrollment is here, like read more. And so if you're somebody who's interested in Medicare open enrollment, you like 100% are going to open that up. But if you're not interested in Medicare open enrollment, then you're like, hey, this isn't me because I'm 55 years old and I don't care. So then you don't need to read that. And so that's another part of the communication strategy, is thinking about events or milestones or topics that are so critical for your clients that you want to send a single purpose email or communication that highlighted that you want to make sure that they read.
Yeah, right. No, that's a good approach. Just to go back for a second, I like your Venn diagram discussion. I can think when we are creating content and campaigns for advisors at horse's mouth, I sometimes can think of marketing as the kinds of things that you're doing to connect with people in your community who aren't your clients, okay? And then the communication is something that happens with your clients and people who have come into your funnel through the marketing, and you're on your list, you're dripping on them, whatever the case may be. But in terms of a lot of the content marketing, which has become such a big thing in the last 15 years, your content marketing, when you're sending a communication to your clients, it certainly probably has very wide appeal to the people you're also marketing to who are in your target market, right? So they're going to be interested in something like Roth conversions or whatever the case may be, even if they haven't become a client yet, but they're 55 and older and business owners looking to cash out, and they meet whatever your ideal client profile is. But anyway, I do like your announcements thing, and if people will get a chance to see exactly how you do that. And you're right. I think only 15% of advisors come out weekly with a newsletter for their clients. I think about 45% come out monthly. I think that is the sweet spot in there for advisors. I think people who do less than monthly, it's probably a mistake. I don't think people feel like they're hearing from you enough if 90 days are passing. You can think about if you sent a newsletter at the end of January of 2020 and then didn't come in again until 90 days later, the end of April 2020. Well, oh my God, those are two different, the world had changed in those 90 days. So in terms of being relevant, I think that's really important. And I know you talk about that too. Particularly, I think for advisors, there are opportunities for what they call newsjacking, right? Something is big in the news, and you can find ways, if it's not absolutely explicit, you can find ways to dovetail what you're doing, what you're communicating with your clients, and kind of connect it to the review that is going on. Of course, when the pandemic happened, that was big. Plenty to discuss there. So, anything else to say about the fact that you'll be talking about marketing communication session 3? What are your actually, I know you talked a little bit about the use of video, you talked social media stuff. So maybe you wanted to say a word about that.
Yeah, I did. So thank you, Sean. Yeah, and so one of the things that we're focusing on for 2023 is a more creative use of videos. So that's sort of one of our little projects. And it's actually interesting because, look, we're here, we're talking. It's not like I'm afraid to talk, but I still have a little bit of is a little bit of a sort of a hindrance in doing video, which is like dumb because I'm talking all the time. And
Right.
So I want to sort of break down that weird psychological barrier that I have. And I want my team on the videos also doing certain things that are within their area of specialty. So one of the things that we're talking about and starting to implement is there are some folks that don't come see you anymore, or they're smaller clients. So you're not like necessarily trying to encourage them to come in all the time. And so instead of just sending them that written review, we want to do a short 1-minute video that accompanies that written review. And so that's one of the things that we're going to put in place. And some of these videos don't have to come from me. So also when we send out these announcements of, hey, Medicare open enrollment or whatever, we're thinking of having my planning assistant, Jen, maybe she does that video. And again, trying to put a face to the name, trying to personalize the team, and not like everything is Debbie Taylor, because there are a lot of great folks that are working behind the scenes. And also it takes the burden off me that I don't have to do every video, everything. And so that's one of the things that we're working on this year that's sort of cool and sort of looking ahead, so to speak.
Right. Yeah. Well, you set us up perfectly for a sidebar promotion on Doug Pierce is going to be launching later this spring, the Advisor Video Bootcamp. And I know one of the key objectives in that program for Doug is to get advisors comfortable with looking in the camera and talking. It's easy for you when we're talking back and forth, but sometimes people are a little self-conscious when they're talking by themselves into the camera.
Yeah.
They tend to freeze up a little bit or get a little stiff or whatever.
It's just weird. It's just weird. It's weird.
Trying to get people comfortable with hitting that record button, looking into the camera, and just talking naturally, and not for long, but like you said, those short videos, we think there's a lot of potential for advisors to do a lot more in it. So good. I'm glad people will be getting some insights about this in session 3 of your workshop. And
I don't know how. I don't know how many insights are. It's one of our projects for this year that we're working on, but but I appreciate it. Yeah, by then we'll have it down, hopefully. But yeah, it's just it is sort of interesting, right? So you get me on the video here, and you're like, "Hey, Deb, we got to do video on whatever," and I'm like, "Okay, let's hit record, let's do it." But if you're like, "Oh, Deb, you've got to like record this video to client X," and I'm just like, I'm putting it off all day. It's like weird, right? Because you have none of that feedback, none of that energy, none of that connection. Right. And so anyway, I'm thrilled that Doug is doing the sessions on it, because Doug's totally amazing. And again, it's like one of our little projects, one of our little initiatives for this year. So to sort of build that out. So yeah, it's good.
By the way, I tend to think, I think if people can think of it as sort of a video voicemail, because people have left long, detailed, business-oriented voicemails, not that long, but anyway. Think about it that way, it becomes a little bit easier just to remember to continue to look into the camera. But the other aspect is, and you talk about this a lot, there's a huge amount of sharing that goes on in your workshops. And, no doubt you'll have somebody in the group who's been doing video. I remember a guy out of Ohio. I think he's kind of retired now, but 15 years ago, his name was Mitch from Ohio. I can't remember what his last name was, but he was like doing these recordings specifically to the client, kind of after a meeting. He would kind of do a summary, and he would do a screen capture and record the thing and send it off to his clients. He was like, way ahead, way ahead there. My point being that there's so much sharing that goes on in your workshops, and there may be, some people in there who have some very good input and some advice on how, in fact, they're doing not just video, but all the other things that you talk about. I mean, that's what makes your workshop interactive and so meaningful and useful for people.
Yeah, and that's a great point, is we are constantly talking, because I don't have all the answers, and people have their own practices that look, all different ways. And so I'm glad you brought that up, because this is not the type of, webinar or seminar, wherever, where it's top down. I mean, this is very much like we're all on the same playing field, and I will throw out an idea, and I'm very honest about things that we've struggled with or things we're working on improving. And so it's great, because then the folks all come online and they start talking about their successes, and it's really neat like that. So yes.
Right. Yeah. And challenges too, right? People bring challenges, things they've been trying to get over the hump on this thing or that thing for a long time. And sometimes the group is able to provide some powerful and effective to-dos for that person to go ahead and implement. Anyway, the fourth session of your program is going to be about the client experience. And I know you've given a lot of thought to this. So I'm going to throw it back to you to, tell us a little bit about what's your philosophy about the client experience, and what are some of the challenges you have encountered over the years, and we'll talk about how that's going to play out in the workshop.
Yeah, and I think that's a great question, because you're right, it all does go back to philosophy. And from the very beginning, I was like, hey, I cannot control the markets, but I can control the client experience. So my attitude was, let's control the controllables. Let's do everything we can for the client, create, a great client experience, before it was even called that, right? And then, when things happen that are outside of our control, we're going to have this great connection with the client, a lot of allegiance, and we will get the benefit of the doubt, and they will stay as our client. And by the way, that formula has worked, right? Because the clients see you working hard for them every single day. So when they end up losing, last year, 15, 20% of the market, maybe some even more because they had high tech or whatever, like they saw us working hard for them in every single way for them. And so then we have, this incredible retention rate because we have committed so much into that client experience, which is like very broadly defined, but let's control the controllables. That's the philosophy.
Yeah. And translating that philosophy into, on the scene tactics that your staff, tactics or activities, I should say, really. We've been doing a lot of research last year and a half here at Horse's Mouth around the discovery meeting, and the discovery meeting series that any advisor engages in then transitions into the sort of on-ramp strategy. How do you bring a client into your practice? And there's the moving over of the accounts, and then there's just so much going on. So can you just talk for a minute about, that aspect of the workshop and the kind of things you'll be touching on in terms of, I don't know if you use the 30-60-90 framework or not, I forget. But, how you start up with new clients and the things you're paying attention to relating to that client experience.
Yeah, I mean, so right, like you're saying, it starts from the very beginning. So that's even, and we talk about this in the workshop, right? It's starting during the approach talks, during your discovery meeting, and setting the tone there as far as, what those prospects can expect if they become clients. And I'm, a big believer in structure, right? I don't like a lot of surprise. So really laying out for them, what our promises to them, what our pledges, what they can expect from us. And then when they sign on as clients, there is, a sort of a whole onboarding process connected with that. And, to your point before, right, there's research out there that shows, even with prospects, that they're not tracked as far as Salesforce or a CRM, right? That somehow, I don't know, people magically remember all the people that they're prospecting with and trying to sign on as clients. I mean, I don't know what those other people do, but literally there's data that only like half of advisors, routinely track their pipeline. So for us, we use a lot of reporting. I mean, we use Salesforce, but other folks use different CRMs. And we're tracking all this. We create spreadsheets when Salesforce falls a little short, and we will be tracking, okay, this person's in the onboarding process. Here are like the 15 steps that they need to go through. And it literally is like 15 or 20 steps. It's even more than that. And, here, this is where they're at. Oh, they're getting hung up here. We need to intervene. So there is, a fair amount of structure, literally from the very beginning.
Yeah, and I just wanted to say, of course, I think about 50% of people in the business are using Redtail. And I had somebody ask me recently, oh, well, if I go to Debbie's workshop and I see she uses Salesforce, but I use Redtail. So when we're talking about that aspect of the business, is it really going to apply to me? And I think, of course, it does actually apply, because, the sequencing, the things that I forget the terminology they use, but I know the things that you set up in your CRM, whether it's Salesforce or Redtail or, any of the others that are out there, it's easily translatable. It's not, no one is missing out on anything because you're using Salesforce and they're using Redtail.
No, I mean, the concepts are all the same, right? Is like every Monday we have our weekly team meeting is what we call it. So we had it this morning. It goes from about 9 to 9:30. Oh, another big push this year is efficiency, another big push. And so we're trying to cut our meeting times, be better prepared, more sort of focused. So the weekly team meeting used to routinely go about 45 minutes to an hour. We've cut it to about 30 to 35 minutes, try to get that time back for everybody. And so, but every Monday morning then, and also we have huddles every morning, Tuesday through Friday. And the huddle starts at 8:45 and goes to about 9 a.m. So a little 15-minute huddle for the day. And so we have an agenda for every single meeting. And sometimes if it's a huddle, it's, only 4 or 5 agenda points, right? It doesn't have to be pages, but we have an agenda for every single meeting. And, to your point, CRM, doesn't matter, Salesforce, Redtail, whatever, is the idea of like, who's in our pipeline? Who are we trying to close between now and the end of the month? That's a universal language. So whether you're using Redtail or Salesforce, the idea is you should know who's in your pipeline and you should know who you're trying to close in the next 30 days or 25 days or what have you. So that's a good example.
Right. Yep. Good. And so, of course, your segment on client experience touches upon not just the the sort of nitty gritty of bringing somebody on board, but, the long-term cultivation of clients individually in terms of personalized communications and, birthdays and celebrations and client events that you put on. And I thought maybe you want to say a little bit about that.
Sure. I'll give you an example. We are right now organizing our Galentine's chat, which is next Wednesday, February 15th. We hold it every year. And so what happens is
what Galentine's means, because I actually ran into somebody recently who said, I'm putting on my Galentine's. It's like, it's become like everybody expects everybody else to know. No, it's a great idea. Well, go ahead and explain to us, what is Galentine?
So it's basically my women's advisory board, but I don't call it that because, I don't want it to sound too intimidating or too formal. So we call it our Galentine's chat, where the women come to our office. We already have 12 women signed up, by the way, and it's over a week from now. And we already have 12 women. So they come to the office, and it's interesting because we do an advisory board in the fall every year. And I have like a very specific agenda. And run through like all of our marketing and communications and new team members. And, it's like very detailed like that. Well, for the Galentine's chat, it's literally a page of sort of these open-ended, like feedback type questions. right? Just very open-ended. Well, we don't even get past the first question because the feedback just comes like fast and furious, okay? They are way tougher on me than my co-ed board that's in the fall every year. I mean, the women just like slam me the entire time. And so anyway, but it's all, towards a good end. It's fine. And so we get in the room and we have our Galentine's chat. And the idea here is how can we better support women, right? As Taylor Financial Group, what can we do to better support you individually, as clients, women as a community? Like, what can we do better? And it's, again, very free flowing. I'm not there to like shut down dialogue. So we do that for about an hour, hour and a quarter. Time goes by very quickly. And then we usually go either to a cooking class or we go to have a nice dinner. And so this time we're actually going across the street to like a pretty decent Italian restaurant. They have like great food. And so we're going to just go across the street, keeping it casual and fun. It's BYO. And we're going to have a nice Italian dinner. They have all kinds of food, but it's like going to be great. And like I said, we already have 12 people. And what's cool about this is these women are already starting to form their own community where they look for each other, during our client events and ask about each other and then really enjoy getting together when they see us. And at our last women's event, the feedback is they wanted more women's events, a women's newsletter. So we started doing a women's newsletter. I'm actually doing a women's webinar at the end of next month. And so the women were like, we want more stuff geared towards us. And I'm like, okay, so we're going to start doing monthly women events. A quarterly women's newsletter, which we've already started. We've done 2 of those, monthly women events. And like I said, and a women's webinar next month, purely like education for women. So that's an example of the client experience. Now, women is our niche, which every time I say that, I cringe because women are half the population. So it's a little pathetic that they're a niche, but women are our target market. And so we are really sort of building out then our connections to that target market and our service and everything.
Yeah, and I love I love the women's niche. And just to push back a little bit, it's like, yes, they're half the population, but as soon as you start filtering by assets and age, then starts to become a smaller and more appealing group. And the reason I like to talk about you and your women's niche is because I recall you saying like 15, 20 years ago, you had this idea, but to pursue the women's niche. But at the time, you felt like the business really wasn't there as much as it is now. And over the last 20 years, we've seen, a number of significant trends happening. We have first of all, for women who are working, they're in their peak earning years now, right? The ones who are getting ready for retirement or pre-retirement, right? They've been in the workplace and been high earners. Many of them have had the silent generation or the greatest generation as parents who have now been passing away and have passed away for the most part over the last 10 years or so. And so they've come into significant wealth. Additionally, you have a gray divorce, another situation where you have boomer women who, any variety of facts behind the situation, are suddenly in need of good advice and have the assets to get the good advice. And so, it's interesting that 20 years ago, those trends weren't as solid as they are now. And you can probably, point to one or two other aspects of that target market as well that just make the women's niche, very, very appealing, and not just for women advisors too, by the way.
100%, Sean. I mean, 100%. We could have a whole other conversation just about women. 90% of women are going to manage their own money someday. We all know that stat, right?
Right.
However, women are not trained, culturally to be proficient with money or aggressive with money, generally speaking. And I know there are exceptions to that. And then what you see is these women who are married and they are going to outlive the spouse. And now you've got these women who are all alone, who never really took an interest in this, didn't feel comfortable with this. And so it just is ripe for opportunity. There's just huge need. There's just huge need. So yes.
Yeah. Yeah, and so again, another benefit of attending your workshop is you guys talk about the women's niche, among other things. I know you have other niches and markets you make an effort as part of building your business around too. So, and people can share their own insights and struggles as well. So, okay, well, I think Doug Pierce, I think that brings us to the end of this live stream. Can you, Doug, throw it back to you and see if you can remind us when we're going to be here with Debbie again, because what we're doing is having these little check-ins in advance of her 4-part workshop, which is once a week starting February 28th. It's Build a Better Business Workshop. And Doug, when will we be on here again next?
Yeah. Hopefully you guys can hear me okay.
Mm.
So I'm going to put on screen a link to a calendar where you can find these other sessions. But real quickly, I'll just kind of verbally tell you the next preview session is on February 14th. We have another one on the 22nd. And then the last one is on March 2nd. So,
all right. Yeah, we're actually going a little bit beyond the start of Debbie's workshop because it is once a week and everything is recorded. And so even if you made up your mind March 2nd to join Debbie's workshop, you'd still have 3 of the 4 live sessions in front of you, and you can catch up with the recorded sessions as well. And the recorded sessions are available for everybody for 60 days following the last session. So, Doug, thanks for putting the links into the chat there, as well as the link to the Build a Better Business Workshop registration page. So, all right, everybody. Debbie, thanks so much. Great seeing you again. Thanks, everybody, for being here. Take care. Stay warm. Be safe. And we'll see you. We'll see you next time.
Thanks all.